Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. Steve Pulaski behind the microphone. Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, my boys, my inimitable crew, back and better than ever again on a Wednesday evening. Man, it's good to see you guys. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Well into October, still waiting for the cooler weather. If you live in Illinois, you know what I'm talking about. It has been unseasonably warm. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, it's the end of the world in slow motion, so we're good.
I'll start with you, Joe. Joe, how you been recently?
I had a great weekend after like 2 weeks of like event planning at my job and all this other stuff. I went to I went to go see James Bond, so like that was already a great start.
Yeah.
2, I got to go get ramen because even though it has been hot, there was one day where we did get some chilly weather. And that's the day I got ramen. And then I went to Fright Fest when it was really hot out. And it totally sucked because, like, I dressed up for, like, a cold night at a theme park going on rides. And it was, like, 80 degrees until I got around by 8 o'clock where, like, I'm sweating in a hoodie and jeans. But other than that, it was a fun weekend. And then I had the Indigenous People Day off because I didn't want to say the other guy's name because he's an asshole. So I basically took that whole Monday just to relax and, like, you know, just kind of recuperate and get ready for the rest of the week and go back to work.
Now, just first and foremost, don't disrespect Chris Columbus. He's a good director. He made the first 2 Harry Potter movies. He made Home Alone. Let's not disrespect Chris Columbus.
I should have seen that coming.
Okay, that was my joke at the office on Monday. I was like, you know, he made the first 2 Harry Potter movies. Let's give the guy some credit over here. Dom, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay, and a slight tangent off of that as well. In hot take, I think they should have renamed DuSable Lakeshore Drive instead of Lakeshore Drive because it's generic Lakeshore Drive, unless there's a history there I'm not aware of. Instead of that, they should have named Columbus Drive, which is right next to Lakeshore Drive. They should have renamed that DuSable Drive. Well, whatever. Anyway, yeah, no, pretty good. Yeah, you're right. It's Joe. It's been hotter than usual, and as someone who works with outdoor events as well, it sucks.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yes, it does.
It's been raining and it's been hot. I guess slightly better than cold, but you don't know what to dress for. So yeah,
this is one of those times of the year. I always say if you live in the Midwest, you have empathy. This is one of those times of the year where you start your car, you go to work and you have to have the heat on. And then in the evening, you have to like stumble, bum your way and get the air conditioning on. I always tell myself when I go to work early and then I get off at like 12 and I go in my car and I go to turn the air on or whatever and the heat's on. I just think like, oh God, morning Steve was a real bitch, you know? Like, it's just, it do be like that. The good news is, though, at least it's going to get in the 50s and the low 60s. I am all for this fall weather. With the way that summer's been lasting, we need to have fall weather on Christmas, in my opinion. But moreover, we've got 3 big things to talk about today. The tentpole of the show is going to be our review of No Time to Die, the brand new, long-awaited and even longer delayed Bond movie that is finally out, the conclusion to the Daniel Craig chapter of the Bond series. We will be reviewing that in the middle part of the show. I'll also recap and review the first episode of Chucky, the new SyFy series, heavily promoted too. I don't know the viewership numbers. I actually didn't look at the viewership numbers before the show, so that's my fault. But I have a hunch that this show was pretty widely viewed and has probably retained pretty good numbers too, because SyFy promoted the hell out of it, social media promoted the hell out of it, and it was trending on Twitter the entire time it was airing. So I'm looking forward to talking about that, even though I might go against the grain a little bit on some of the opinions. I want to slow the roll on the praise for Chucky, the SyFy movie, especially after the pilot episode. But I'll rain on that parade. I'll burn that bridge when we come to it, as I like to say. But first and foremost, Dom, I kind of knew the tangents of this a little bit, but I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs. I credit Dom for this next segment. I almost want him to introduce it, but I'm already having these guys do the legwork on the No Time to Die review. I don't want to ask him too much. That might be above their pay grade. But Dom really pointed us in the direction, rather, of a really good piece, AP News, shockingly, very good source, to talk about the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees and the looming strike that could take place. And it just came out today, October 18th at 12:01 a.m., would be the time should a strike take place. That's when it would happen. But it involves the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, known as the acronym IATSE, which is very, very phonetic. I like the fact that you can pronounce the acronym.
Is it IATSE or is it IATSE?
I heard IATSE.
I've heard both. In Chicago, apparently it's IATSE, but in the East Coast, see that. In the East Coast, it's IATSE.
I pronounce it IATSE because the video you attached in the group chat.
You're right.
That's how they pronounce it.
That makes sense.
But IATSE, I can absolutely see that. That is the Chicago accent right there, IATSE. I love that. I might just call it IATSE just to be different and be regional. Whatever the hell you want to call it. Whatever the hell you want to call it. We gonna fight over here. Dom, you take it.
I was just going to say, full disclosure, I do have connections to people that are part of IATSE. So just keep that in mind. But this potential strike, this could be resolved at the last second. If you're within the Chicagoland area, you know all about the teacher strikes and how it's like you're waiting the night before. All right, am I going to send my kid to school the next day or what? If it goes through, this has the potential to be as big as the 2007-2008 Writers Guild strike, which completely disrupted television, film and television writing for a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Really, if you weren't around for that, it's like, I'm going to start with the 07-08 Writers Guild strike, and I'll keep this really condensed. Essentially, the Writers Guild of America, which is a union, if you're not familiar with the concept, they were unhappy with the pay, right? The collectivization. A bunch of writers were like, hey, we're not getting paid enough. We're all just going to leave our job, go on strike. And then we're just going to, because we're all writers, if we all strike at the same time, then they don't have any writers. And the show just has to be like, okay, well, do we pay them more or do we get crappier quality? Which is kind of what you're doing. That's kind of like the very basics of how a very, very, very crash course basis of how a strike and employer relationship, between the workers relationship. But yeah, that really disrupted television. Whole seasons of TV shows were rocked. Like they completely had to
remember it.
They had to swerve around like story plot points. Okay, we're gonna do some clip shows for a bit here, some flashback episodes. Series were even canceled. I need to actually look back on the list on that, but like straight up series were canceled. Like, hey, we're done. It's kind of like how COVID may have canceled a few shows. But in any case, back to where we might be headed soon enough in a few days is that IATSE, they have a number of demands that they would like to bring to the bargaining table, and they have been bargaining behind the scene. So things like higher wages, of course, minimum time period between, all this, a bunch of very specific labor things that, do matter. So keep that in mind. These are the things that dictate your day to day as a worker, if you're a part of this union and if you're in the entertainment business. But I think the big one and the most interesting one is, I'm taking this off Wikipedia, but it's all sourced. An end to the current classification of streaming as new media with lower minimum wages. Now that is, I think that's really the focus of a lot of it. You can certainly point to it because it's such as millennials, we know what that feels like, where it's like, yeah, sure, I'm a blog writer. You can just give me like $1, or like I should say like, oh yeah, you're a blog writer. Yeah, you give you like $5 for it. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. Oh, social media manager. I just give you like a couple coupons, stuff like that. We've all had some, I'm doing kind of extremes, but we've all had that level where it's like, yeah, boomers in charge. They don't understand how important social media is, websites, stuff like that. And for IATSE, a whole host of uh, of uh, labor rights and pay have not caught up. Most of the pay and the benefits have not caught up with the ads. I mean, everything's streaming now, and absolutely things have fallen behind. They haven't been reading. I'm sure, like part and partial, they've been renegotiated, but not in a large enough scale to the point where IATSE wants to strike. I should mention IATSE is labor unions and lefties just love being part of their own thing and then joining other bigger things. They don't like being absorbed. So IATSE is also comprised of all sorts of other local guilds and all sorts of other even smaller, heavily localized things, which is a good thing to a good extent, more democracy and all that stuff. But this has reached a point where even the big IATSE, like the big membership, the one, throughout the whole country and Canada, it's actually both America and Canada, they're just going to all strike, of which I believe they have 150,000 members, technicians, artisans, craftspersons. It's theater, but it absolutely affects
basically anybody who's not a director, producer, writer, or actor. Basically, so you're talking set designers, cinematographers, you're talking costume designers, makeup artists, all the people that work on the fine details as to why you like a movie or a show.
Animators,
that's
too.
Essentially who it affects. Animators as well. That's a big one.
I should say, I was kind of soft pedaling it before. If this goes through, this will be bigger than the Writers Guild strike of 2008, because those, not to say just the writers, but you could try and do something without a team of writers, right? You could try and fumble something together, which a lot of TV shows tried to do. If this goes through, you're done. Like everything will stop straight up. Now, I should say there's some details, like because of contracts legally in certain localized other parts of the country, it's like, okay, we're extended through 2022, so we can't strike. Otherwise, the courts will get involved. But this will be big if it goes through. And this is, and I think on a larger meta level, I know we're not really a lefty podcast, but on a larger level, this will be very interesting if it does go through, how it affects just striking overall, because this is this is entertainment, everything, man. If this goes through as big as people are saying it might go, all of the shit you consume in terms of media will come to a halt, minus podcasts and things that may not more or smaller things, but TV, film, theater, oh my god, that's concerts, animation,
broadcast.
So
I know I keep chipping in, but I mean, like, it's just amazing to see what else actually gets affected by this. It
could, again, I don't want to hype it up too much, but the warning signs are happening now, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't go through, but or I should say if they do come to an agreement, because the potential is just that big.
I mean, they came out with a date today. A date today, October 18th. So they come out with the guns. Matthew Loeb, I believe, the head of it, he came out with the date today, and so. You don't want to say it's imminent, but the threat is real. This is not a smoking gun sort of issue. The threat to strike is real. And I'm glad Dom brought up, it's hard not to, but I'm glad he brought up the 07 to 08 Writers Guild strike, because I vividly remember that. We were about, 11, 12?
TV got weird.
TV got weird at that time. And I looked up, actually, Dom, when you were really introducing this topic better than myself, quite honestly. You're definitely more well read on it than myself. And that's truth right there. But I was looking up shows canceled during the strike, and a lot of these you're not going to know, because a lot of these were still, I don't want to say fairly new, but still kind of in their infancy at the time. You had shows like Fox's K-ville. You had Bionic Woman on NBC, which I remember that was canceled in the midst of the Writers Guild strike. You also had the show Girlfriends on the CW that was canceled. And then you had just a plethora of productions that were postponed, such as Entourage, Hannah Montana, Battlestar Galactica, Rescue Me. You could definitely tell this was mid-aughts, just some of the names of these shows, but the effects on this, if this strike were to happen, the effects would be seismic. There's no doubt about it. And I always say the one time a year when people like to acknowledge or just understand that there's more to a movie than a writer, a director, and an actor is the Oscars. But again, man, you lose your cinematographers, your set designers, your production designers, your sound editors, your animators, your costume designers, your makeup artists. What do you have? At the end of the day, what do you have? You have a bunch of people that show up on the set that kind of know their roles, but expect a lot of other people to help make the magic happen.
Yeah.
It's not a one-man show. We assign credit to directors. We assign credit to, because we have to, but movies are mini companies, mainstream movies especially. They are mini companies. If you consider the size of the budget, the size of the crew, and the people that work on them, they are in essence mini companies.
Look at any movie credits, and after the cast list, that's pretty much a lot of those people are going to be in IATSE. I don't know. Joe, you said animators. I wonder if CGI artists are included in that too.
I assume so. Like I would assume.
I would assume so too.
Artists count as that because when I see
I've seen the Animators Guild thrown around with this.
Like when I see the fact that concerts can be affected by this, it's like, okay, well, other than the sound and light people, it's like there's gotta be effects people in that as well when it comes to lighting.
Trade shows.
Oh shit! So the the auto show in Chicago.
Anything at McCormick Place here in Chicago.
That's crazy. Wow.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Donald E. Stevens Convention Center on high alert.
Yeah, we'll close, but again, I want to emphasize just in terms of overall the concept of striking and labor movement. This isn't a bunch of miners in West Virginia striking and then no one talks about it. No one listens to their demands. This is everything you consume, pretty much, minus YouTube, the content creators on YouTube. But I'm sure they'll be all for it too. So yeah, dude, this is keep your eye on it.
There's two quick points I'll bring up just to close. You've also had massive support industry-wide of good faith negotiations. I know that's a broad sort of PR-friendly term. But Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, Octavia Spencer, and 118 senators along with House representatives have come out in support of good faith negotiations between IATSE and the representatives too of the Alliance of Motion Picture and TV Producers as well. And two, the other thing I'll just say, and this is just a complete anecdote, I don't know about you guys, but I'll tell you right now, I don't need to know the specifics. I don't need to know the fine details and everything. But let me tell you, when I'm driving down the road on any given day or whatever, and I see a giant inflatable gorilla and a bunch of people with picket signs and lawn chairs sitting out in front of a business or something, I always do two honks and a wave when I'm driving by. I always do that, man. I love a good strike, man. I love a good strike. I don't need to know the details, but I assume the people that are busting their ass and sacrificing their pay, I would assume that they are in the right and they are sacrificing something major. And I'll give at least two honks and a wave to the inflatable gorilla and the noble men and women that do stand in front of their businesses at 11 o'clock in the morning as I'm getting my morning Dunkin'.
Joe, we should strike.
We should.
Easy.
I don't get paid enough
No.
to push these buttons, man.
I actually drove by. It's in the past couple of months, I should say. I actually drove by a strike, and instead of inflatable gorillas, it was inflatable rats.
Rats. That's another popular.
It was
one.
rats holding money bags, and I'm like, hell yeah.
Well, that's I think that's usually, is that indicative of union conflict or something?
As a son who his dad is in the union and has gone to an actual strike, it deals more with union from time to time more when it comes to that rat thing. The rat mascot.
Yeah, because the rat is symbolic. The gorilla, I think the gorilla is I think I kind of almost made that up or connected it because you see a lot of that with car dealership promotion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
The rat is generally I think like, and Joe would have more background on this than myself for what it's worth, but like the rat generally symbolizes like greed or something like that, usually involving unions. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, like, I hate to point out too, but it's just like, like my dad told me too, like, and if you watch The Irishman, you'll see this. But like, like mobsters were kind of tied to the union at one point, so having the whole
that's actually
persona
one of the major. There were two things that killed unions. There were two things that killed unions in mid-century. One was organized crime, and then two, Reagan. Like Reagan just finished the job.
With the air traffic controllers too.
Yeah, but for the record, like organized crime, that was like a problem that the unions never really like figured out.
Yeah,
like they never really shook. Hey, you know what's you know what I wanted to watch? We'll close on this, but you know what's a good, a potential good movie that I wanted to watch is Sylvester Stallone's first post-Rocky movie. It was called Fist, and in it, Stallone plays a union leader that has to deal with the mob. It's called Fist. I'm sorry, capital F dot capital I dot etc. And it's apparently a crime drama, a union drama, a political drama. Sounds right up my alley, and I've had my eye on it for a while.
FIST is an acronym for it's fictitious, but the fictitious labor union Federation of Interstate Truckers. And I'm sold on it for two reasons. Just looking at it, first off,
I was gonna say, this poster looks badass.
Not only that, Norman Jewison directed it. That's the man behind Jesus Christ Superstar. He also did The Hurricane, Rollerball. He's done a lot of really good movies. I'm a big Norman Jewison fan. The other thing is it's written by the screenplay, along with being written by Stallone, is also written by Joe Esterhaz, who wrote, let's not forget, wrote the acclaimed Showgirls. Let's not forget. So now I'm in like Flynn with this movie. Flynn with this movie.
Finding a way to connect it back to Showgirls somehow.
I'm gonna leave this up. I want to look into this.
I don't know if it's good. I haven't seen it. It could be bad, but I just think it's interesting.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, and like you said, it's Stallone's first post-Rocky movie too. So I think that alone loans credence. And like I said, I'm a big Norman Jewison fan. He also directed The Cincinnati Kid too. But we'll move forward. We're going to keep you posted on this because Lord knows in a week's time, it'll be 2 days after the strike date of IATSE. So we'll keep you posted. Probably, if God's willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be touching base on this topic again next Wednesday in some way, shape, or form. So credit to Dom for bringing that to both of our attention, taking us to school on that, and a good job handling that topic. And you about to handle this one too. We are reviewing No Time to Die, the brand new, long-awaited, and even longer delayed James Bond movie. This is the final entry in the Daniel Craig saga, which 15 years, 5 movies. Casino Royale back in 2006, Quantum of Solace, back in 2008, I believe. Then you had Skyfall in 2012, you had Spectre in 2015, and now you got No Time to Die in what should have been 2020, instead 2021.
I mean, this movie wasn't even supposed to come out in 2019, but like Craig got injured on set, and there was like a bunch of other delays with it too. So this movie's been like floating around for the longest time to be finished.
That was 180 news cycles ago. I completely forgot. Yeah, this was supposed to come out like Thanksgiving 2019, wasn't it?
Yep.
So much time to die.
Yeah, a lot of time to die. And the movie's 2 hours and 43 minutes. A lot of time to call the corner on this one. No Time to Die. Now, I'm going to turn it over really because I did see it, but I do not have many big opinions on it, almost by reason of default. Number 2, I didn't write a written review of this on my website. And number 3, I was overruled by the committee over here, the underpaid committee that's threatening a strike, mind you. I was overruled in terms of reviewing No Time to Die. I am talking to 2 way bigger Bond fans than myself who have more expertise on this. I mean, it takes a I mean, it takes a critic. I'm not going to lie. It takes a critic of great stature and great humility to venture out and drive 160 miles round trip to go watch God's Not Dead, We the People on a Monday evening when he has to work at 4:30 in the morning the following morning. That being said, it also takes great humility for a critic to understand where his opinion should not be regarded with a lot of esteem given prior ignorance. As far as the Daniel Craig movies go, I've only seen Skyfall in addition to No Time to Die. So again, I do not have the full context outside of what I've read of the series. And on top of that, I've only seen, I think, 4 Bond movies that I can name. So I am not A, the biggest fan of this series, B, the biggest loyalist. I'm talking to a man right here who makes Sleepless possible every week, who has seen every Bond movie and called it in the green room his favorite film franchise.
Yeah.
And on top of Dominic too, who is more versed in this franchise than me, I'd rather turn it over to you two. I can chime in and interject my opinions here and there, but I'm honestly more interested, truthfully, outside of whatever opinions I offer, is just I'm more interested in what you two have to say. So you know what? We'll go with the expert to start the show. Joe, what say you about No Time to Die?
All right, I want to give a little context here to why this film was actually made in the first place, because originally the previous film, Spectre, was actually supposed to be Craig's final outing as Bond. But if you saw Spectre, you're probably saying to yourself, well, that sucked for a finale. Spectre, it's not a bad film, it's just a very disappointing one to really end this run of Daniel Craig films on, when like Craig actually took it, not himself, but his version of the character and the writers and directors and everybody else who was associated with this era of Bond, they were taken in a different direction, with Casino Royale being more of a grounded take with Bond. No gadgets, it's really just him being a spy and playing poker and just really trying to get information out of the villain in that movie. Even the villain doesn't really have henchmen in that movie. It's really just him, played by Lashif, who is played by, oh my god,
I know. I don't know, but I know you're talking about Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes, Mads Mikkelsen. To where like each film after that, and even Quantum of Solace, which to me is the worst one of his films, because oddly enough that came out in 2008, 2009 when that writer's strike happened, and we left it up to a bunch of idiots to write that movie where it was just action scene after action scene after action scene with nothing we love about Bond following it. But Skyfall, which to me is another great one, and that came out on the 25th anniversary of James Bond, and it was like so good there as well. And you started getting back into some of the flavors that we like about James Bond. You had a little bit of gadgets here, you had the villain with henchmen and everything, and we thought Spectre would be a great way to close it out, but it wasn't. So Daniel Craig, even though he hates playing this character at this point, he was like, I'll come back for one last ride, but that is it. This is my last one. And I can't speak, of course, for Steve or Dom, but to me, this is the best conclusion we could have hoped for with this character, I think.
Yeah.
This, to me, for the first hour and 30 minutes, this had the potential to me to be my favorite Bond film of all time. I know that's pretty big to say.
And you've seen every single one.
I've seen every single one. I know you're going to have some, like, dude who was born in the 70s or 80s probably find us on YouTube and be like, these fucking kids don't know what they're talking about. Like Goldfinger is where it's at and everything. I'm not kidding you. The first hour and 30 minutes, it became my favorite Bond film. And the reason being is because this film takes heavy inspiration from what is probably my second or third favorite Bond movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which, if you've seen this one came out between two Sean Connery films, because he decided to retire the character because he didn't like playing him anymore, and George Lazenby decided to come in and step into the role only for one time. Oop, I clicked on something. I was supposed to keep it full screen there, my bad. But he was supposed to play the character from here on out, but he only came and played James Bond once and left. This film is a really different look at James Bond, where he's more emotional, he's much more vulnerable, and because he actually falls in love in this movie, legit in love. He's not there to have sex with like pussy galore and then like call it a day. and other very appropriate, like, names for women throughout these movies. He actually falls in love with a woman in this movie, actually marries her, and I don't want to ruin what happens at the end of that movie, but if you've seen it, you know it's a tragic ending, actually, to Bond that is actually really emotional. It did stuff we didn't see typically with those first 3 James Bond films from Sean Connery, and it was a breath of fresh air. And No Time to Die actually tries to follow those same footsteps, especially in that first hour and 30 minutes. There is so much in this movie that they were like, no, we're going to change it up, actually. Like, we're going to pay heavy homage to that film as well. Throughout this film, you actually hear On Her Majesty's Secret Service's soundtrack intermixed with the new soundtrack for No Time to Die by Billie Eilish, as well as the classic Bond theme. And throughout the movie, you see why it's intermixed here. Bond, I'm going to say this right now, it's going to make some Bond fans unhappy, but don't be expecting Bond to go into this movie and having sex with tons of women like he usually does. This is the present day. Bond, you cannot go up to women, just touch them, and have sex with them whenever you want.
Can I say one that's actually legitimate progress?
Yeah,
Two, like sensibilities have changed, and like
exactly.
You can't do that. Like literally, the Bond films came out during the swinging '60s, man. Like Austin Powers definitely made fun of that. Where it's like, yeah, I'm just screwing chicks willy nilly, but like, yeah, it's really overall the Bond that we have built up for this is a generation's Bond right here. Daniel Craig, without a doubt. Kids have grown up knowing only Daniel Craig as James Bond. It really is the end of an era. And I think a beautiful thing they have done overall with this whole string of Craig films since 2006
is having continuity.
They've not just the continuity. What's more important, I mean, you're right, absolutely. The continuity serves the larger accomplishment here, which is that you have emotional depth, like long-standing ties and emotional depth that aren't like just fun. Which, don't get me wrong, the other films, they're fun.
Yeah.
Right. I need to like really do my homework on James Bond. I've seen smatterings of the Connery ones here and there, and actually also technically my first Bond was before Craig. He's Irish.
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan. Thank you.
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, those were fun.
I was going to chime in earlier when Joe said this might be his favorite Bond movie. I was going to say even better than Die Another Day.
Oh man, that's pretty easy to accomplish nowadays.
Yeah, but you can't like. Not that you can't. Let me say that you can't. Honestly, with the new series, I'm very curious, like where they take Bond from here. We'll discuss that later, but it'll be interesting. But with this Bond, it felt right, where it's like, yeah, let's take a break from Bond screwing a billion chicks in a single film. I don't know if he did that or not, but like it feels more believable, right? Like literally, you don't have an agent in Pussy or a person in Pussy Galore.
Did you see Spectre Did you see Spectre?
Yeah, I've seen all the Craig films.
Okay, like even that last one, like, because the one thing I didn't like about Spectre is they tried to go back to the classic era Bond too much, which was him sexualizing women, where like the sex scenes that happen in that movie are really uncomfortable, where he has sex with a woman the night of her husband's funeral, like literally the night she gets home from her husband's funeral, he has sex with her, and the other woman that, like,
she was sad.
The other woman played by Lea Seydoux, Madeline, where like in that movie you really didn't buy them at all. Here it's done a little bit better since you're actually given more time. But in that previous film, it's just like literally they get into an action scene, they almost nearly die, and he's just like, well, what should we do now? And it's like it literally cuts to them like making out in the room, about to have sex and everything. It's like, and it plays the most cheesiest music. It's like, it's just not right anymore. I'm not saying James Bond can't have sex in these movies anymore, but it's just like, you got to do it correctly. And one thing I loved about this movie is when he meets with Ana de Armas, who's part of the CIA in Cuba.
Great moment.
Sequence. Yeah, great whole.
I love that
whole
sequence. Scene.
That was my favorite action scene in the whole movie, but just the build up, everything throughout it. It reminds me of why I love James Bond so much. Like wearing the tux, going into secret organizations, the weird gadgets.
That was more classic Bond than the train scene in Spectre, where they were straight like because in Spectre they were straight up like, yeah, I've got a white tux she's in a dress for some reason, and I'm fighting Batista who's like the big buff dude on a train while it's like 1940s sparkling everywhere. I was like, and okay, cool, but
we'll have sex at the end of the scene. See, classic Bond. It's like, no, that's not it. Like, this is the look, this is the flavor I wanted. You know, Ana de Armas, she's a very beautiful looking woman and everything. I don't need to see Bond have like, you know, anything with her. It's fine. And my favorite thing about the scene is how they actually, how she exits the film between her and Bond. It's literally like they share a drink. He says, ciao, shakes her hand and says, you know what? You did good today. You should be proud as a CIA agent. And then like she like thanks him and they go on their way. I was like, did I actually just see Bond do that? That is the most refreshing thing I've seen in 24 films. Like, what? That blew my mind.
He has learned discipline.
He has.
Mutual respect for peers. We love to see it.
Like,
not all men. Not all men.
Like, it's so great to see them actually like not only do this with the character, but the fear I had when I heard that they were gonna like, you know, kind of like, you know, make a Bond film that's aware of its Me Too era was like they were just gonna like half-ass it that we've seen with some movies. Where, like, you know, it's just like, hey, look, we have the strong female character and, you know, Bond won't, like, you know, make out with her and anything. It's like, the way it's done here, it feels much more real. It feels like actual characters interacting, and that, especially in that sequence there. And in the other character as well, Nomi, played by Lashana Lynch, who, like, to me, anytime her and Bond are on film, I mean, on screen, they have such great rapport with one another. The way they're just, like, kicking at each other, busting each other, trying to one-up each other, and eventually, like, you know, learning to appreciate how she is the new 007, because if you remember at the end of Spectre, he retires and leaves MI6 for, like, the 20th time of his career. Like, she then takes up the mantle of 007 and everything, and, like, the way they just try to one-up each other, that was, like, one of my other favorite moments in the film, too. And just having actual women be 00s now. We've had Bond women who, like, you know, they've been badasses and everything, but, like, going to this extent, having the gadgets, being on the same playing field as Bond, that was so cool to see finally actually be done. And the way they do it, like a cat and mouse game too, where it's like, especially in the action sequence I was talking about in Cuba, where both of them are after the same target. One's after, Craig is working with the CIA during this point, and Lashana Lynch is working for MI6. And they're just trying to, like, capture the same target, and, you know, depending on who gets it, of course, is going to benefit whatever organization they work for. It's like watching, like, Tom and Jerry, or Spy versus Spy, I should actually say. It was so cool. It was like, wow, man, like, this, again, a refreshing thing is, like, Bond actually, like, not fighting against another spy, but, like, trying to one-up race against another spy in these films. Let alone a woman too, who gives him blue balls at the beginning of this movie too, which I thought was hilarious.
I thought that was great. I'm like, okay, sure, this is he's gonna bang a black woman so that he could say that. It was like, see, no. I'm glad that they went the route that they did. Let's cut to break, but yeah, dude. I really, compared to where Spectre left off, which wasn't horrible dog shit or anything, but it would have been really sad to see that be the last one.
Yeah.
And seeing this one here, while not perfect, and let's get to the negatives coming back from the break.
Well, when I get back, I want to touch on one more thing just involving Craig, and then
sure.
As much as I say I do love this movie, there's a reason why I keep saying the first hour and a half was almost my favorite Bond film.
Yeah.
All right.
We will cut to break right here after the Zoom-sponsored intermission. Come back with Sleepless with Steve. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening. We'll be back with finish our review of No Time to Die, and I'll also touch on the first episode of the SyFy series, Chucky. We'll be back momentarily. Sleepless with Steve. back after the briefest intermission in a couple of weeks at least. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time, wherever you may be, however you may be listening or viewing coast to coast live on YouTube, or even edited long after we've been broadcasting live over here. Me, Steve Pulaski, Dominic Guanzon in the trademark blue polo, Joe Viso, man in the controls, well deserved to be on that theater screen. The only reason I haven't mimicked the theater screen as much as I love the aesthetic is because I'm not the I'm not the person who makes the show happen week to week. I have the namesake. That's all I need. Moreover, though, we are talking No Time to Die, the brand new, long awaited, and even longer delayed. That's how I introduce it. No Time to Die. Finally in theaters, finally for the masses to see. And again, I haven't been talking much throughout this review. I did see the movie. My opinion at the end of the day, though, on this movie, there's a reason I didn't write a review on it. My opinion on it is really not substantial, given I'm not a big fan of the Bond series, number one. Number two, I've not seen all the Craig movies. At the end of the day, I really saw this movie. I don't want to say out of obligation, but I saw the movie really to give context to the discussion at hand. I have two friends and co-hosts that know Bond way better than myself, so I let them take the reins on this. What I will say, though, having seen Skyfall, the only other movie I've seen of the Daniel Craig series, what I will say is that I remember, and I have my two closest friends are also big Bond fans, so clearly I'm in the wrong. I'm very much in the minority over here. Two of my other closest friends are very into Bond, and I remember we hung out after they saw Spectre that evening. And coincidentally, this weekend, we're hanging out after they go see No Time to Die on Saturday. But we hung out after they saw Spectre, and they talked about it for like 20 minutes amongst themselves. And I remember them expressing real disappointment, especially coming, 3 years after Skyfall was released. And Skyfall, really, I feel like Skyfall reinvigorated Bond as a whole.
It did.
Because even Quantum of Solace, doing my research before the show, Quantum of Solace made significantly less money than Casino Royale just 2 years later. And it was like Bond was at a crossroads at a time in 2008 where it was if you think back to 2008 when it came out, you had Marvel start to gain traction. You started to see the landscape of movies change.
Yeah.
And where Skyfall, how I remember it, I haven't seen it since it came out. How I remember Skyfall was almost starting to reimagine the Bond archetype in a lot of different ways, and to be a more modern, less maybe chauvinistic caricature that he was for so many years, going back to Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and even before. Then you saw Spectre, which I didn't see. I only know of Spectre based on the reviews I've read and the people that I've talked to who've seen it, full disclosure. How I understand it, and you two can call me out or back me up, whatever you want to do. How I understand it is that Spectre almost tried to retcon, for lack of a better term, and tried to go back and backpedal to what Bond was, so as not to lose the core fan base of the people who have grown up with Bond. They tried to retcon it insofar, not only narratively, but also just in terms of reinvigorating the cliches of the maybe womanizing, chauvinistic caricature that we're so used
backfired
to through all decades. And people did not respond to it. And this was not a case of critics being less positive to it than audiences. This was a case of critics calling it out and audience members being like, yeah, this was not as good, not nearly as good as Skyfall, and more significantly, rather, did not set the tone for what Skyfall did. It did not carry the torch in the way Skyfall did, which was even weirder given that Sam Mendes directed it. Now, No Time to Die, finally, and I'll finish with this. No Time to Die, how I can discern it, seems to at least try to restore the foundation that Skyfall helped build, and also fittingly send off Daniel Craig. And many people, and even partly myself included, even though I didn't see Spectre, kind of felt Daniel Craig's final act should have been Skyfall. With that, I throw it over to Joe.
No, absolutely. I always said, like, if Spectre was honestly the last movie we were gonna get from Daniel Craig, I was like, I wish I wish Skyfall was actually the way he went out, because I would be like, well, at least like, you know, the character goes out and we're introduced to like, you know, M's now back to being like, you know, a guy. Judi Dench retired the character, which, you know, that was a great send off for her. Like Skyfall to me is really M's like send off of a movie, or Judi Dench's like era of playing that character. Which is
it doesn't even have to be it doesn't even have to be a happy ending.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
I mean, like it's just a closure.
Like, and with Spectre, it's like to, you know, when they were like, oh, we're trying to go back into like, you know, pay like, you know, the old fans, they'll love this one. My dad grew up watching the Sean Connery ones. Sean Connery has been his favorite James Bond up until Craig, up until Skyfall. Skyfall is the one that made him go, you know what, I actually like Craig more, I think more than Connery. And I was actually shocked he said that after we saw the movie. With No Time to Die, the last thing I'll make, and then we can go into negatives with the movie, because I do have a few negatives, unfortunately, is that this, to me, is my favorite performance from Craig out of all these movies. And it's because, like, yeah, he is a much more vulnerable person here, very much in respect to what was one of my favorite James Bond films, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where he is scared at times. He is, like, emotionally angry, and he is like heartbroken at moments, and it's just like to see that be done with Bond, it's so refreshing, because even with Craig, as much as I love him as Bond, and he is possibly my favorite as well, the whole thing of him being like, you know, very cold and everything, like, you know, and very few times he'll show like emotion like he does in Skyfall. As much as I loved it in Casino Royale and in Skyfall, by the end of Skyfall I was like, all right, well, I mean, like, can he at least like sometimes be like a human, because it's like everything else is being so grounded and everything, and it's like I feel like this character is lacking here. And Inspector is what really showed what happens when everybody else is being more of like a real human being in the, you know, Bond setting, but Bond isn't. Where this now, it's like, okay, we're gonna make Bond actually feel human throughout this, where he actually expresses emotions other than like one-liners and wants to have sex with women. I really enjoyed what Craig did here. I think it's his best performance as Bond, because of those reasons, because it very much follows what On Her Majesty's Secret Service did. Dom, do you have anything you want to add on?
Yeah, for me, it's just that they are doing so much work in closing out and building up Bond and his relationships with his friends. You don't get a lot of time really building up his enemies. There are actually there's two enemies. There's two main bad guys here.
There's three,
the
if
actual
you want to
enemy.
get technical.
Oh, sure. But it's like, honestly, Rami Malek gets the short end of the stick for a couple reasons. First is not his fault, but like, it's like, dude, you're doing that thing where I can't understand what the hell you're saying. Yep. Like, I get it. Like, you're evil. Like, just talk. But the other thing is that, yeah, he got screwed over, or the character got screwed over, because dude, Christoph Waltz as Blofeld is like the most obvious casting choice. Like, it's the most perfect casting choice ever, right? He was just born to play that role. So every time he does it, it's just too good, you know? And it's like, even that send off was kind of disappointing, because it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's what you did with him, sure. Yeah. But like, as he's coming down the hallway and you have the occasional light coming through him, it's like, this is epic. I feel bad that Rami Malek isn't gonna get to do anything, and we're already like an hour and a half in or something.
To me, the movie, like, because the thing with Spectre too is like, I felt like Blofeld was wasted there, and I hate to say it, but he's also wasted here. Where it's just like, I rather you guys, like, because not only is there two villains, then you have like a secret villain, and then you have like the main henchman that Bond's got to fight. It's just like, okay, guys, like, look, I understand this movie's 2 hours and 50 minutes, but you're doing a great job closing out Bond and all of his allies. His enemies are getting no work at all.
What, from a production standpoint, just make Blofeld the main villain again, because you messed up, exactly. I guess, apparently in the last one. You kind of did, yeah. I'm like mixed on it, but really just how you handled it. It's like, okay, sure, because he lived in Spectre, and it's like, okay, you're saving him for something else, and then you don't do anything with him and kill him off. Spoiler, but like, you really just wasted it. And it's like, you could have saved Rami Malek for the new James Bond. It's like, now like a great actor is wasted without doing anything, and it's like, what a waste. Again, that's all logistics, but it really does show And that was honestly the most glaring thing for me.
Yeah, no,
Everything else was honestly hitting on good fronts.
I'll say
good
this:
levels.
like once Blofeld's reintroduced into the film and we start meeting Rami Malek, it's not that the film like it goes down for me or anything, but I did catch myself checking my watch more often than not when their scenes were happening, because like
Sure.
maybe not Blofeld so much, because I was like, oh, maybe they'll actually do something here with them. And actually, the interrogation scene he has with Bond, I think was actually pretty good. But especially with Rami
It was
Malek,
good, but it didn't mean
it
anything.
didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Absolutely. I was just like, all right, well, by the end of the movie, I'm like, there was no point to that scene, and like we could have cut it out and trimmed the runtime, because unfortunately, like, we've all made this joke on Twitter, we've all seen it, but you know, the film is really long, so there's plenty of time to die. And I do feel like that's also its like other weakness, is that it's closing out as much as possible, that like it goes on a bit too long in some cases. And with, like, you know, the character of Blofeld, as well as Rami Malek's character, who is Lucifer Safin or whatever his
Sure.
name is. I could never understand it when he said it. To me, that character was like, okay, well, this is, I don't really care at this point. Like I'd be checking my watch when his scenes were on, where he was like trying to explain.
He's the Spider-Man 3 Venom of the movie.
He really is. I mean, when he comes on screen, it's just like, what's your motivation? Oh, you know, I want to just kill everybody because just cuz. It's just like, damn, you know, it really sucks when we had like, you know, we had Javier Bardem, who like I thought had a really cool motivation, where like he was an ex-MIA agent, MI6 agent, who was left behind and left to die, but like his failed pill kept him alive and burnt his mouth, and no one came to save him, and they knew he was alive. Or, you know, Lashif, who was just literally a guy just wanting to like do arms trading, just getting caught up in the wrong crowd, both with, you know, other, like, you know, Somalian pirates and stuff he had to fight, as well as Bond himself that he got caught up with. It was just like, wow, like, you know, the one thing about the Craig era films is like those two villains were like, hey, this is actually like, you know, these are great Bond villains. That's a lot of people would say are some of their favorites. Like the take that they did with Mads Mikkelsen being more grounded, and Javier Bardem being more of the traditional Bond villain with the henchman, the secret island, and everything. But how grounded they even played that to an extent. It really sucks that like with Blofeld we didn't get the potential that we could have, and with Rami Malek, who is a fantastic actor, the guy just gets shafted basically until the third act, where like that's actually when Bond and him finally meet, is in the last like 20 minutes of this movie. And to me, it's like when Bond and Bond villains don't meet till then, you don't really have that like great Bond villain that you've been looking for, because like you got to have that rapport with these two characters. How many times have we seen Bond meet the villain? The villain's just like, oh, what's your name? Bond, James Bond. And like then they have rapport. Then Bond's in the death trap. Then he escapes. Then they chase each other. And then they have the final showdown. Like, you know, you didn't get that here. And yeah, did I want that? No. But I would have loved to see Rami Malek at least meet James Bond before the final like battle of the movie.
Yeah. Let's close it out here. And you know, I'll start with it. This was more than a competent film. This was a very entertaining film.
Yeah.
This was action with a capital A, and I'm very glad that Daniel Craig gets his send off. Honestly, there's a sequence in the very opening scene where the camera, it's good film work. That's when I started trusting this movie, is when Bond looks behind him. You hear a motorcycle in the distance. The camera pans over. The motorcycle is coming up, but then Bond comes out of frame and tackles the dude off of the bicycle of the motorcycle.
Sick. The cinematography in this movie is amazing. Yeah,
like that camera trick, that bait and switch with the camera you just did there. Very simple. Okay, I trust you. You take me on a ride, and it did. So 3 out of 4 stars. Awesome stuff. Yeah, I wish we could have gotten more on the villain, but everything else was firing in on good cylinders here.
Steve, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'm not going to give a rating here, so
okay.
All you, Joe.
All right. Yeah, for me, I mean, you know, this year especially, that, you know, cinema has been reopening. The action blockbuster to me has been lacking a bit this year. I wasn't that impressed with Black Widow. I mean, I know you guys gave it 3 stars. To me, it was about like 2.5, maybe even 2 stars for me. I did like Shang-Chi, didn't love it like everybody else did. Jungle Cruise I liked. And, you know, like there's just been other ones that I've been kind of like, this is kind of a downer, like, and disappointment for me as a fan of these franchises, like the Fast 9, like, you know, that was a disappointment. We even running out a whole theater for that is what really made that like as entertaining as it did for me.
That's the only reason I still remember that movie.
Do you remember me playing dressing up as Dominic Toretto and just making fun out of the movie?
Never forget.
And then the Suicide Squad, which, you know, was my most anticipated comic book movie. And like when it came out, as much as I did enjoy it, I was just kind of like, like there is just something lacking here for some reason for me. I don't know what it is. So I was just kind of like, King man, Shark. I guess I love King Shark though. True. To me though, No Time to Die, and it could be like, I don't know if it's because I have my not nostalgia goggles on, but my fan goggles on about Bond. But like this by far is my favorite blockbuster of the year when it comes to action films in general. I had a blast with this. It's made so well. It's done perfectly, I think, to send this era of Bond off. And the way it ends too, I mean, like, just like I can't imagine. My dad hasn't seen the movie yet. I'm gonna go see it again with him, and I can't wait to see his reaction to how this movie ends, because like it does something you haven't ever seen in a Bond movie before. The way they end this movie, for me, this movie, I absolutely loved it. It could have been like my favorite Bond film, but now it's like my top 10 favorite Bond films of all time. But this is probably gonna be on my top 10 best of the year when we get to like, you know, January or February and we start compiling our lists. I know like. I might be a fanboy here and everything, but for me, it was 3.5 out of 4 stars. I absolutely loved this film. I had a great time.
I really enjoyed listening to your guys' thoughts. You contextualize some things for me personally. Maybe one day I'll do a marathon of the Bond movies, or at least go back and at least chunk them by actor, by lead actor. Now is not that time though, however. But I do value, like I said, the criticism you bestowed here. This was fun, kind of just to be an audience member. You guys don't need me. I'm the least essential part of this show. You guys are the capital E essential workers over here today.
Well, you got your solo review.
Yes, I do, because I cannot exit this show without going long-winded about something. Far less phonetical, I guess you could say. But I will end with the show with a review of Chucky, the brand new SyFy series that is now, I believe, streaming on the SyFy and USA Network app. It is going to air on SyFy Network every Tuesday evening, 9 o'clock Central Time. And first things first, I just want to say it was really cool with how they promoted this series and how they made it like a priority that you have to watch it on TV, actually. Because it almost like, I don't want to say like watching something on TV during its premiere is a nostalgic thing. But in the day and age of streaming, it like took me back. It was like, okay, we get a breather with commercials. I can sense the cliffhanger coming over here. So that was interesting. There's a couple quick things to note about this Chucky series that is now airing on SyFy. It is going to be 8 episodes. It serves as the sequel to Cult of Chucky, which is the 7th movie in the series. It is also helmed by Don Mancini, who is the screenwriter, has been a writer on every Child's Play movie thus far. He has been a big presence, creator of the series since the very beginning, has worked on every movie and has directed every installment since the 5th movie, Seed of Chucky. So this series is not coming from a third-party source. The only project Child's Play related that Don Mancini did not work on was the very seldom remembered 2019 remake of Child's Play starring Aubrey Plaza, which I'm not going to lie, I kind of liked more than the pilot episode of this series.
Ooh, okay.
Quite frankly. And I was not the biggest fan of the Child's Play remake, but I liked the direction it went.
I was about to ask you what you think of that, but okay. I see.
I did like parts of that movie. I really liked Aubrey Plaza in that movie.
Yeah.
I was not the biggest fan of it. In total, I do think it's one of the least brought up, or one of the lesser brought up factoids of the movie, that Mark Hamill is the only other actor to have voiced Chucky besides Brad Dourif, which I think is like a fact nobody speaks of. But Mark Hamill provided the voice of Chucky in the remake of Child's Play and did a damn decent job. I'll say that much too. But it's not about that. It's about this new series that's on SyFy. Now, I plan to do a more comprehensive review after having seen the whole series. when it ends. I believe in late November is when it's finally going to end. I'll probably do a review of the whole series on the show when the time comes, maybe even write something about it. Those are for later days. But as far as the first episode of Chucky is concerned, I will say it's pretty good. There's a lot of things to like about it, and there's a lot of things that I am quicker to push back on, because this was a unique experience for me too, watching this show. I did not I did a couple tweets during the show, but I didn't look at what everybody else was saying until this morning. And the response to this has overwhelmingly been positive, which is kind of cool. You know, the world's got enough negativity. If people want to rally behind the Chucky series, who the hell am I to rain on the parade? Having said that, though, the plot of the series revolves around a kid named Jake. And essentially, he's played by Zachary Arthur. He's a teenager who purchases the Chucky doll, the good guy doll, at a yard sale, because by this point it's been 30 years, I believe, since the Child's Play franchise kicked off. So they're kind of running with that timeline. And he purchases the Chucky doll from a yard sale because he likes retro things, not vintage, retro. The show makes that very clear. It's retro, not vintage. But essentially, Jake is also in the closet. He's gay. He's a teenager who's gay. And, you know, his parents, his close family knows it. Some kids in school know it, but the bulk of the school doesn't know it. And I would say the crowning scene of the whole pilot episode, at least, is when the one woman, her name is Lexi. She's played by Olivia Allen Lind. I believe I'm saying her name right. She's a girlfriend of like the douchey jock in the show. Because the kid's a punching bag of an outcast the whole show, and she's about to out him in front of the whole school until Chucky chimes in when he's sitting with Jake and gets Jake to go up on stage and pretend like he's a ventriloquist with Chucky when it's Chucky doing all of the voices in front of the school. Now, that scene is interesting. Without giving anything away, that scene is a lot of fun because Brad Dourif reprises the voice of Chucky, and Brad Dourif has been the voice of Chucky since day zero. He's a very great voice actor. It gives the lens of authenticity. And furthermore, too, is that, and we haven't even gotten to these episodes yet because these actors do not make an appearance in the show. You have Alex Vincent coming back for this, who played the original Andy Barclay in the first two movies. You have Christina Elise, who played Kyle, Andy's foster sister, in the second movie. She's coming back in the show. Devon Sawa plays Jake's abusive uncle as well. And he's very good. And he looks, I'm going to tell you right now, I hope it's makeup. Devon Sawa looks like an alcoholic in this. Like, he looks like an alcoholic. Devon Sawa, if you don't know him, he was also the lead character in Final Destination. In the very first Final Destination, he played Alex. He's very good here. Now, the problems with this, with the pilot episode of this, not to go much more long-winded, the pilot does just enough to keep you intrigued, but it just does just enough to disappoint. And I'm going to say, first and foremost, I did not think the acting in this pilot, at least, was very good. I think you've got a lot of obvious line delivery here. You've also have a lot of very odd structures that kind of come to play and scenes that explode almost with very little warning, including the scene when Logan, Jake's uncle, played by Devon Sawa, takes a hatchet or takes a bat to Jake's sculpture, because Jake loves making sculptures. That's part of the reason he's invested in this Chucky doll in the first place. There's a lot of weird scenes that don't build very well. With a TV show, you expect them to build a little bit better given the allotted runtime. But I felt like some of the build up to certain climactic moments in this pilot didn't fit, on top of the acting, which I did not feel like was personally very strong. Now, having said that, the one thing that this series absolutely kicks ass with right off the bat is the music. The music in this series is going to be great. So much so, I hope there's a soundtrack, because, and I'm not very hip, if you couldn't already tell. But what I can say, though, is that they use a lot of ambient pop numbers in this show that bizarrely fit and set the mood of tension and suspense that make this pilot memorable in so many ways. Again, it's only a 43-minute pilot. It's hard to really judge the series. I like the intrigue and at least the tangents that it builds, and I hope to see it maturate in certain ways. But it left me wanting more at the end of the day. And I think that when it comes down to it, as the series progresses, there's enough of returning faces, including, as I just mentioned, Alex Vincent, Christina Leese, Brad Dourif is the voice of Chucky, Don Mancini is the one who created the show in the first place. There's enough staples and foundation for this show to be great. And I really hope that it materializes as the episodes go on. As it stands, the pilot gets a 2.5 out of 4 stars from me. I'm not going to give points over here because Chucky, I see a lot of the Twitterverse reacting. Oh my God, Chucky is the next iconic gay ally. Let's, again, you know how I feel. You know how I feel about giving brownie points to situations and characters solely for existing. You understand how I feel about that already. So I'm not ready to go that far yet. But I'll say this, I look forward to next Tuesday when the following episode comes out. There's just elements of this that felt a little off kilter to me in terms of the acting and in terms of some of the buildup. As it stands, though, the pilot episode of Chucky gets 2.5 out of 4 stars from me. I look forward to the subsequent episodes. And when the series concludes, I will give a full review of the show right here on Sleepless with Steve. I've been a fan of the Child's Play series for years. It's been a series that I look forward to. And it's funny because I got into it back when Seed of Chucky came out. I was like 10 years old when I first watched Child's Play, 10, 11 years old when I first saw the original Chucky movies. And Seed of Chucky came out in 2004, I want to say. I believe it was 2004, 2005. And then we didn't get the sequel, Curse of Chucky, until 2013. So there was a long period of dormancy with this franchise. And I remember them talking about making a remake of it back in 2010 and 2011 that never materialized. Brad Dourif was going to do it. Then he wasn't going to do it. Then he was going to do it. And we didn't see that remake ultimately until 2019. So I'm interested to see where they go with this. And a big shout out to, just to end on a good note too, big shout out to Don Mancini. You know, I don't have to love everything, every direction the series takes, but I'm really happy the series is, and as a whole, as films and this TV series specifically, is in his hands, is in the hands of the guy who's gotten this series out the mud, in so many words, who's been with this series since 1988 when Child's Play originally came out with Alex Vincent and Catherine Hicks. So I'm very happy to see that, if nothing else. Don Mancini's somebody, too, who's very active as well, loves interacting with the Chucky fans, has kept that fandom alive, even during the dark ages when there was nothing happening with this series. He's been somebody who's like, if it's under my watch, it's going to be taken care of. It's going to be respected. And I give him props to that for that. So I look forward to this Chucky series. If nothing else, I'll tell you right now, we just reviewed Man-Thing, Dom and I, the SyFy original movie back when SyFy was spelled like the genre, SCI-FI network. Yeah. Let me tell you, SyFy, SYFY over here has upped their production values. This series looked good. This is a good looking series. Now, I haven't watched like Z Nation or whatever the other SyFy original shows have been in the last several years. I don't even want to get into that crap. But like, no, SyFy has upped its production value. Somebody's bankrolling this thing. Somebody's opening up their pockets. And this series does look good from an aesthetic standpoint. So it's 2.5 out of 4 stars for the Chucky pilot. Again, definitely not going to catch as many eyes as No Time to Die, but few things will with the remainder of the year. That's going to wrap up Sleepless with Steve, however, though. Great episode. We're reviewing Halloween Kills, I believe, next week. Am I wrong?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we are. And it's going to be on Peacock. If you have premium Peacock, or you can see it in theaters.
Yes, I'll be seeing it in theaters this weekend. Looking forward to it. Halloween Kills, the sequel to David Gordon Green's Halloween that came out in 2018. David Gordon Green, the director of everything from the very beautiful, poignant, depressing in some ways movie George Washington back in the 90s, everything up until Pineapple Express in 2008. David Gordon Green does not get enough credit. He's like the Richard Linklater in some ways. I would say not as deep as Richard Linklater in terms of subtext, but definitely in terms of varied filmography. DGG definitely gets some credit for being diverse with his projects, no less. Want to give a shout out to Dominic Guanzon, not only for really galvanizing this episode between the IATSE the looming IATSE strike on top of leading him and Joe the No Time to Die review. Double salute to you, gentlemen. You never disappoint when it comes to Sleepless with Steve. And, of course, touched on the Chucky pilot episode on this week's Sleepless with Steve. We'll be back next week with Halloween Kills, a review of that film, along with an update, for better or for worse, on this IATSE strike. We'll come at you with all those details coming up next week. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. For Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.